Okay, so welcome everybody. It is Monday, actually the 9th of June, 2025. And I decided to come to use on a Monday instead of my normal like was Tuesdays. But today I feel great. So I thought, well, why not give it another shot to try and see if people will finally understand how important it is to be able to do the right things while our country is falling apart at the seam. And it's not just our country, it is worldwide. So I'm not going to be talking much today. I'm going to be showing you a video, and well, actually, two videos combined in regards to what's happening and why the CPU is so important to everyone, and which is the Canadian People's Union. So the Canadian People's Union, we've launched our how can I say, our Power Shift to Freedom movement, and that's to be able to place Canadian citizens as the sovereigns, as the collective head of state, which we should have been as of April 17th, 1982, officially. And that was robbed from us by our politicians ever since 1982. So the only way that we're going to be able to get anything done and to find out the truth, because we can no longer tell what's the truth on video or off video, or even somebody speaking. Are they actually saying these things? Are we being fooled? Are the government's going to use that against us to say, ha ha ha, this is a deep fake? So before we start assuming and presuming that politicians are saying certain things, we have to make sure that we're on the ball here. Otherwise, we're going to lose every court case. So, anyways, to be able to get anywhere in this world, the people from every country is going to have to become the official sovereigns of their countries. And it's the only way to finally get true democracy. Because when they say that our country has democracy, it does not. It only gives you the right to vote away your power once every 4 to 5 years. Okay. So when you go and vote, you actually give your voice to a politician, and then they can do whatever they want, because we were never protected against them in case they default. Okay. And against the people. So now we're finding ourselves in this very situation now. The lives of our children are at stake. They've done everything to manipulate everybody and to get us into a situation where we're going to be controlled by private corporations. So if you did not want to believe us for all of these years that we've been trying to tell you that there's only one solution, and that's for us to move forward as the collective head of states with the Canadian citizens and Indigenous peoples, because two types of peoples own most of this country. Okay, well, all of this country together. So, now we're looking at being attacked from all sides, and they're keeping us separated. They're doing atrocities against to the nations, to the people, to our children, forced vaccinations and whatnot, and all of these things, and theft of DNA. And it doesn't stop here. And now you'll see why. So hopefully you'll be able to listen to this gentleman from the UK. Okay. And you'll be able to understand a little bit more of what's going on and see that, yes, the CPU is the only legal viable solution to all of our problems, because it would allow us to be able to find out all of the information that is needed, because they've been hiding atrocities from us. We don't even know how bad it is, since we're sitting on uh, a gas earth. Okay. Filled with gas, where the gases are, where the permafrost is melting, because the core of the earth is thawing out the permafrost from the off the planet. So a lot of things are going to be happening. They've been hiding this from us since the 1950s. Is this really true? Is it not? Where are the more dangerous areas? How can we get people out of those areas? And I'm really worried about the Indigenous nations up in the north, and people in the northern part of Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, Manitoba. all of these places, Quebec, and Ontario, I mean, all across the country, and especially even in the east, Prince Edward Island, all of these places. Where are the core plumes coming from? Where are they? Are there other gas pockets coming out? There's going to be more sinkholes. Tectonic plates are moving. The sun is causing all kinds of havoc on our electrical field. All of these things we've researched, and it's really important that people get to know what's going on. So those things again are stuff that we've researched. That's why it's important for you to know, for you to be able to protect your children, especially from lies and false flags and stuff like that, because they've been creating a lot of stuff. And again, to keep us in fear and to keep us unmotivated, depressed. And now they're going to be controlling everything we do. So, are you ready to fight for this, or are you just going to bow down and do what you're being told to do? And if so, then, there's nothing much the CPU can do for you. If that's your attitude. If you're just going to comply or wait for a savior, nobody can fix this. Okay? Nobody can fix this. And unless we get together and find out what we're up against. Because until we have those rights and become the sovereigns over our country, nothing good will happen. Okay? So I'm going to play this video for you, and please enjoy. And it's got the French translation for the French people. Bon, là, je vais vous montrer une vidéo, mais il est en anglais, fait que s'il vous plaît, lisez les sous-titres. OK? Merci.
And then a really, really important message, because I really believe that right now there is civil unrest being manufactured. And I think that there are psychological operations designed to make people mentally weak and psychologically weak as a result of everything that we're witnessing from having to witness a genocide in real time, the most recorded genocide in real time. So anyway, one of the reporters in the interview focused on the fact that Qatar had paid for a plane. And that plane was for allegedly replacing Air Force One for the White House. And then the accusations were that it gets transferred to Trump after his administration. And so people can see that for what it is. But immediately this week, we got an announcement after Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia, to Qatar, and to UAE, which I covered in last week's episode. Trump asked Qatar for help in reaching a positive outcome in the ongoing negotiations with Iran. Now, what is interesting about this is there was like social media that are going crazy, but Qatar and America have worked together for a long time. America's always had a military base in Qatar. And while they're always telling you that Iran funds Hamas, Hamas is a resistance movement against the illegal occupation that America funds via its proxy Israel. And their political wing office has always been in Qatar. And there was an interview with the Qatar leader stating that America was always okay with this office. And actually, they always wanted it to be there because it's actually Qatar that backs financially the resistance. And it's not so much Iran. There is Iran that backs it as well. But you're always told that it's just Iran. So when you follow the money, you get a slightly different story. And so, this the resistance that is fighting against this genocide, you can see the types of games and media narrative that's being played. We also know, if anyone was paying attention on October the 7th, that Biden was weaponized in order to push the beheaded babies narrative. And if you go through the posts that I put through with the documentary Atrocity Inc. on my blog, you can see that that was complete fake news and where it came from, as well as all the fake news about the mass violence, sexual violence. I don't want to say the word that might get us censored. And you can see that that was all manufactured. And once you understand this, you understand how these operations work. You also know that because the Israeli government has fallen apart, the head of chief of war admitted to killing their own people by implementing Hannibal Directive, where mass Apache helicopters by Israel ended up firing on the Raven party that was happening, that wasn't meant to be there. And we know that the hostages, that everybody that is in Israel normally needs to work for the IDF and therefore was a prisoner of war. And we know that there were 10,000 hostages taken by Israel, Palestinians before that. When you combine all of that, you understand the types of false flag operations. I'm not saying it didn't happen. It happened. There was mass violence. But we know it's not what we were told. And they're still using that narrative in order to justify the genocide that's happening right now. And I've covered in previous broadcasts why. So US knows all about that. So why are we being told that it's Iran? Today we got an announcement that the US and Iran are holding their another round of nuclear talks in Rome. And Trump says that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. You're told that this crazy Iran that wants to implement Sharia law all around the world, that throughout this whole thing has been acting in compliance with international law when the attacks happened on, or the retaliation attacks to the strikes within Iran by Israel, when they responded to them, they told United Nations, they told US, they broadcast, and they didn't kill any civilians. And so all we've seen is Iran trying to normalize, because we know that prior to this, there was the normalization. China normalized between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And Trump implemented his Abraham Accords, which was to sidestep Iran and to sidestep a Palestinian state. And Saudi Arabia said, we can't join that until there is a Palestinian state. And so Iran said, we need a Palestinian state. Qatar was funding, the resistance. There were massive, massive lies around what happened. And so I believe, I've covered this in previous broadcasts, don't want to get too deep into this, but why is Trump saying you can't have a nuclear weapon? Because there was always going to be a nuclear deal. Because China had already normalized between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And this was always about nuclear energy. And Trump's visit with BlackRock portfolio companies was always about the artificial intelligence and robotics trade, based upon BlackRock's portfolio of companies that needed a multipolar world and America to be shrunk into a regional power, which is why they influenced the process of having Trump so that he could implement BlackRock's process of tariff policies that isn't going to make America great again, isn't going to help Americans, just like there was the operation to strategically weaken Europe and get UK to guarantee all of the loans that were needed for BlackRock to take over all the land in Ukraine, and America to get the rare earth mineral deals for the companies that needed it for their electric vehicles like Elon Musk, for the military industrial complex that is sharing their technology to usher in how to steal money from Europeans, British people, and Americans, create more inflation, and use these big, beautiful bills in massive corruption, crony capitalism, and fool people into thinking that this is about being British first, European first, and America first. Because those same companies and those globally multinational corporations don't give a shit about you. And when they want to manufacture civil unrest, they can manufacture that civil unrest. Because this is actually all about nuclear energy, not nuclear weapons. This is all about manufacturing narratives that lead to the justification for selling more weapons. This is all about the settler colonialism, which is why Britain and America created Israel in the first place, to create the violence that was needed to not allow the region to unify around their resources, to always create divide and conquer. And because Saudi Arabia and various other power structures like China didn't allow a central bank in their region, and because they managed to build enough economic power by partnering around their resources and giving in to the dollar and setting up the petrodollar, they didn't end up like Gaddafi. And now, because the financialization of all of the American assets and the selling off and prostitution of all the politicians and the fake democracy and the fake capitalism, the Federal Reserve debt-based Ponzi scheme managed to redistribute all of those companies where BlackRock has a board position and create a new stateless structure where all of the different structures underneath it managed to culminate in this $20 trillion of assets where our politicians no longer work for us. And people are trying to figure out, why is there no infrastructure? Why has China and Saudi Arabia got all this infrastructure? Why are they paying less taxes? Why are they not creating so much war? Why are we getting inflation choosing between eating and heating when all that's happening is we're signing 100-year agreements to allow BlackRock to take over Ukrainian land and killing all around the world for the profits of these different complexes? Because our governments are no longer sovereign. There is no MAGA. There is no MEGA. There is no make UK great again, make Europe great again. There is just the extraction of data, which is what Elon was there for in the first place. There is transitioning to a technocracy, and we are in a centralization versus decentralization. And the only reason we're getting to discover this stuff is because there was actually sovereignty in the BRICS layers, sovereignty in the GCC layer, to create a competing force against the BlackRock layer that is currently weaponizing and utilizing, asset stripping everything from Europe, UK, and America for the optimum portfolio value of the BlackRock share price. So that we can then take this nuclear power and usher in a wave of AI and robotics. And the reason this is happening is because there was a resistance, and China put together a normalization plan that was the opposite of the old forever war plan. So that leads me to my belief that we are witnessing right now a genocide because Netanyahu just wants some strategic points and is in order to negotiate his own freedom. And there is actually just a negotiation between Iran and Saudi Arabia around that nuclear energy and BlackRock. And BlackRock and Iran and Saudi Arabia representing these different factions, the GCC aligned with BRICS and America, America being a proxy for BlackRock, BlackRock being a proxy for its portfolio companies, are actually just allowing this genocide and starvation campaign to continue because people are trying to figure out what the end game looks like. And Netanyahu's just negotiating his freedom. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia represents the GCC in this. And ironically, the Israeli regime kind of represents what the Iran deal looks like. Because I think the GCC and Iran are on the same page through China. BlackRock and America have been strategically retreating because remember the three things I said, in order to have peace in the Middle East, normalization between Iran and Saudi Arabia, a Palestinian state, which comes after we've got this final negotiation around what the nuclear deal looks like. And that nuclear deal is the final step. And I believe after the nuclear deal has been announced, we'll get the normalization, we'll get the ceasefire, and we'll find out what the end negotiation network is. And that's what I think we're witnessing right now. And this just shows you how inhumane everything is. They'll trade genocide. And you know what? This has been happening all along. We just haven't been able to witness it on camera. We just didn't have the technology because Telegram was created that allowed the Palestinians to share the videos. We just didn't have X and a desire to contribute to these artificial intelligence algorithms to give us freedom of speech where they could no longer control the narrative, but then they turned that into not having freedom of reach. And so this what makes me believe that despite the humanitarian crisis, I believe we're in the final stages at some point. And Netanyahu is just trying to negotiate his freedom. And he'll probably get away with it because he is holding up the deal that's already been figured out between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And US will be retreating, but when the terms are being negotiated. And that's why we had the trip around what AI will be given, what robotics will be doing, what deals will be doing, because nothing is as it seems. And they just need us to believe the stuff that they want us to believe. And of course, Trump is going to get credit for creating Abraham Accords 2 at the end of this. But the reality is, this is the decolonization. And the covert wars and the violence was all about resources. And it required multipolarity in order to put an end of the dominance of the hegemon propped up by the dollar proof of weapons network that now has BlackRock and the network of portfolio companies essentially as their CEO underneath it. And the strategy was always divide and conquer and fund fake groups and create fake narrative and control media in order to manipulate, divide and conquer, weaponize racial tensions, weaponize religion in order to make sure that nobody could unify around their resources. And that was always the strategy. That was the post-Bretton Woods world order. That's how the dollar became the world reserve currency. It was propped up by proof of weapons, death, destruction, violence, rape, pillaging in order to prevent competition. And now that very same force, those that profited from it, that managed to vassalize the US, EU, and UK, are strategically weakening. And they're using the same tactics that they used to weaken the Middle East and weaken the global South. And they're using it against their own people right now. The same colonial tactics. Divide and conquer. They use that to carve up the Middle East. And it looks like, from what I'm seeing in Britain, from what I'm seeing in Europe, and from what I'm seeing in America, is this being used as well. And it looks like they're going to use the same strategy because GCC and Saudi Arabia is going to be the new power brokers in the region, and they'll get rid of Israel, because Israel was just about radicalizing the Jewish people into believing that they were fighting for a worthy cause when they were ethnically cleansing the Palestinians. And now we've got to get through all of this stuff because they use that in order to create a fake war on terror to fund the groups that were the militias that were funded by the West in order to steal the resources from the Middle East and from Africa. And now they partnered and built power, and there was enough resistance against that, where finally China was able to come along, build BRICS, unify with the GCC, and put together the terms and conditions that lead to the expulsion of US from the region. But now we have this non-stateless power called BlackRock that has vassalized. And now there is no US government. There is no UK government. There is no European government. They have a deep state mechanism, the layer 3 thing that I've always been sharing in other videos. Layer 1 is the printing of money for the shareholders of the Fed. Layer 2 is the intelligence network that launches black op criminal covert operations for the benefit of corporate power and creating funds that are funneled in a money laundering network so that you can have money that sits outside congressional, parliamentary, fake democracies and fake capitalism. And the third layer is the government, and the government is a vassal for that power structure. And now that power structure has become more and more powerful because of the Federal Reserve System. And that's why we are in a decentralization versus centralization mission. And that's why they can commit a genocide right in front of us and then accuse South Africa that was defending from the genocide and push the narrative into saying they're committing a white genocide in order to turn crimes into racial narratives and religious narratives so that social media can be used and media can be used in order to get people within the West to hate each other, fight against each other, and they can pay agents. Yes, Jordan Peterson, we see what you're doing with these different types of narratives that are being pushed through. We can see what's happening here. It's the same playbook that was already the West was doing on the rest of the world. It's the same one that was put in Ukraine, divide and conquer. It's all these different narratives that we're seeing on social media. You know, the Jewish conspiracy, Jewish rules the world. Zionists are in a fight for their survival because Jewish people need protecting. Protecting from who? Protecting from America, or Europe, where many of the immigrants came from originally. Are you saying it's not safe enough in your country? Why is that? Is it because you're fueling white nationalist movements? Is it because we're fueling all these different narratives because people are trying to figure out why they're broke? Because of this theft? Because of the debt-based Ponzi scheme? Because different operations are used to serve big pharma, like shutting the whole place down and then forcing everyone to inject themselves, where the share price pumps like crazy and now is 95% below. And who's already borrowed the money from Bank of Japan to make that? This is a criminal network, and it requires. And you always would use the weaponization of the different faiths. And now you're pushing out that narrative of that the Muslims are taking over and they want to implement Sharia law. And people who have been in these wars and watched their children and parents and grandparents killed by the same people that were saying they were defending democracy, that turned against their own people because they don't give a shit about you. And then they create Operation Mockingbird in order to pay the media and say that anyone that finds this stuff, call them conspiracy theories, make them feel weak, weaken their mind, psychologically destroy them, make them feel like they're speaking absolute rubbish because these operations happen behind the scenes. UK was always the beta test, and we saw what they needed to do when they wanted to have border policies, manipulate politics through racial tensions, create civil unrest by taking the people that were affected by these policies of stealing people's money and making them choose between eating and heating, and then fueling religious tensions. And then what happens this week? Suddenly, 2 Israeli staff at the embassy are murdered in Washington. One of them is a German Israeli that worked for the IDF, still does, maybe. I haven't had too much time. I don't have a theory on what this is right now, but I'm suspicious by it. That's all I'm going to say right now, because I don't have enough information to know. And then we're told that his Christian girlfriend, because we have this Judeo-Christian relationship, and the Muslims are the radicalists that are killing people, and we have invaders in our border that want to implement Sharia law and take away our freedom as a result of the false flag operations that the CIA, Mossad, and MI6 created, like 9/11, by having their CIA agents that justified wars and led to this fake war on terror where you're weaponizing all of these different faiths in order to psychologically traumatize people. Suddenly we're told that the alleged shooter, which I have maybe real, maybe not, is shouting "Free Palestine." And look, I'm not going to say whether this is a false flag or not, because I don't know, but I do know the patterns. But even if it's not, there'll be plenty of conspiracy theories, and the truth will be fought in the end, and we'll find out what's happened. And you'll tell us that any false flag didn't happen because you never admit it and never release the files like the Trump administration said they would. They won't release those files. The Epstein list still isn't here. But it would not surprise me if it was a false flag operation. I'm not going to say whether it is or not because I don't know, quite frankly. But let's just say that it's not. Let's just say it was a lone gunman and was politically motivated. And I'm not saying I think it's a bad strategy if you're politically motivated and you turn to violence. And I'm not condoning any of that violence. I think it will work against it. In fact, it is being weaponized. This is just a narrative that they want to utilize. They don't care about the deaths. They have this high ground saying, oh, we care about preventing anti-Semitism that is manufactured and created. But imagine if you, for 600 days, have been watching a genocide, as we all have, and I'm not talking about the fake media version. I'm talking about the real version, the one where you actually see the genocide that was created by Israel, which is a US proxy, in order to determine what the region actually looks like, that led to this multipolar world order. And it was the most documented genocide that we have ever seen, where every single day we have to watch graphic images of burnt children. And I'm not talking about Jewish children. I'm talking about Palestinians. Beheaded children. I'm not talking about the fake news that there were. I'm talking about the real ones, which is the Palestinians that we've been seeing. We've been seeing the prisoners in Palestine with protests around right to, I'm not going to say that word, sexual violence and everything that we have seen. And that it has been the most documented genocide in history where we have had to watch things that I never imagined I would ever have to watch. I, for one, know the impact that this has personally had on me. Daily massacres, daily gaslighting, daily lies. We're being told that it's the complete opposite of how it is. Right now, just now, today or yesterday, whatever it was, this week, Israeli soldiers just shot European diplomats. Massacres every single day. Hundreds are happening right now. Over 60 days of starvation. There's children, babies that are there looking like, you can see all their bones right now. And they're pretending we're letting in tons and tons of aid when the world knows that that's not happening. Oh, Hamas is subdiverting them. We know the truth. And you've got to make sure you understand the truth. Because what they did there and what they're doing to the Palestinians, I always said, this will be utilized against you if you don't stand on the right side of history here. This is the beta test. I believe it's being used right now, and they're seeing and beta testing what they can get away with. Israel's killed more journalists so that it doesn't get reported. Netanyahu right now is explicitly, with his cabinet, saying in no short terms that they need to eliminate all of the Palestinians, completely wipe them out. This is not the language that they were using in the beginning. The South Africa case said everything that they were saying that led to the rulement that this is plausible genocide, and it will be ruled as genocide. And that's why this is being distanced against itself, because we had to watch this. No, in talking about the largest amounts of gaslighting, obvious. And if you're not paying attention and you're just watching the media, and everybody knows it at this stage, there is no blown up every hospital, targeted and killing nurses, doctors, so that they can't get the treatment that they need, deliberately preventing water, electricity, everything from getting in. This is not about, and we know what the negotiations were. Hamas said that they would enter into a negotiation, return all the hostages. The Israelis protesting in Israel right now know that they're protesting because they know their government doesn't want the hostages returned. They want them ethnically cleansed. They want them genocided. They want to do whatever they can get away with. And at the very same time, as us having to witness this, we have to watch Trump invite the South African president and accuse him of genocide while they're launching the case against the genocide. Do you know what this does to people? Do you know what this does to people? For 600 days, they have put their life on hold to try and make people realize what's happening here. While Trump's pretending to be outraged against this white genocide, theatrics. Do you know what this does to people's mental capability, psychological strength? It's pure gaslighting designed to anger, designed to drive mental problems, designed to take people on the edge and drive them to the very type of behavior that they would never imagine themselves doing. This was people that were already, after the mass injections, the lockdowns, the inflation, the global financial crisis, the wealth, the confiscation, all of these different things, the mass indebtedness. These are all people that were already on the verge of a mental breakdown, if not veterans that came back homeless, addicted to drugs because they didn't get the support that they needed. This is the same suffering that we're witnessing right now, but has been done all along. 1 million civilians in Iraq that Julian Assange, thanks to Bitcoin, was able to reveal on WikiLeaks, and the banks and financial institutions blockaded it and tried to wipe him out and smear campaign him through Keir Starmer in his career before he was installed to send all this money over to the military industrial complex, pretending that he's defending democracy, was used in order to smear, sexual violence campaigns on Julian Assange. People are suffering from mental illness after all this. This is psychological illness. Look at the numbers. These are record numbers of drug addiction, record numbers of prescription addiction, record numbers of suicide rates, record numbers of indebtedness, record numbers of all of this, mental illness, all sorts of stuff. At the same time as being under mass economic pressure because money's being stolen through the proof of weapons network. When people were traumatized by the lockdown and the forced things that ended up taking both of my parents' lives because they fell for being told that they're killing people if they don't inject themselves with that untested stuff. Can't prove it. I'm pretty sure what happened. There's an intuition here. People are barely holding on at the moment to their sanity. And they're having to watch this. This feels like the complete social engineering of people. And we know what they do to other countries. They're doing it on their own countries right now. because this power structure has become stateless. There is no America First agenda. There is no European First agenda. There is no Britain First agenda. It's just pure gaslighting. And how do you control people that are at this stage? It's like, how much mental abuse can you put people through? It's like some kind of mass experiment that we're seeing. How much destruction can you gain? You know, you took the people that were standing up against this and you told them, you're banned in boycotting. You can't boycott Israel. They made it your right to boycott and not fund this thing. They banned it. They clamped down on protesters. They infiltrated the protests. They said, if you're supporting against this genocide, you're supporting terrorists and therefore you can be deported. They deported protesters. They infiltrated that. They shut down universities. They took heads of universities and rugby scrummed people to the ground and replaced them with those that are, you know, and all they were doing is they were protesting against, we don't want our student tuition fees to be sent to Israel to fund genocide. And the whole time, the West, America, UK, Europe, Israel, ignoring international law. They were trialed as war criminals, plausible genocide. We saw all the cases. The entire world said Palestine needs to be free. America veto voted it and said, no, 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 pretending that they were trying to negotiate a deal when the CIA was there all along representing its corporate interest. They ignored international law. They didn't put any sanction instructions. They just ignored arrest warrants. So you're being told that the only strategy that works is the one that they're doing. Violence, genocide, murder, killing, mass destruction. You're sending out a signal that that's the strategy that you use because all the peaceful means no longer work. You can't peacefully protest. You can't boycott. And so what do you do when someone on the verge or the end decides to probably do either a false flag and was able to do that, or they did it genuinely? And they did it for political means because they believed that this was the only thing that they could come up with to stop having to watch children being mass murdered, burnt alive, killed, and all the atrocities that we've had to watch for almost 600 days. Could you blame someone? I'm not condoning it. It will be used against them. It's a bad strategy. But what do they do with that anyway? Now they suddenly think that this is a tool. This is a strategy. They're not talking about all the other people that have been killed. They haven't been talking about the murders that happened to Palestinian children earlier. What about the other types of murders that are happening? Suddenly, this one's got political leverage, so they can use it. They can use it to do exactly what they did in UK. Manufacture civil unrest, divide and conquer, escalate within its own country. At the very same time as we're seeing billions and billions of dollars being sent to war criminals to commit crimes against humanity, and they're just defending them on the media. Congress claps like crazy, standing ovations. They're basically signaling that lawless violence is the only legitimate strategy that they're using. So when somebody else decides to use it, I'm not justifying it. Stick with the law. I don't recommend anybody do this. But can you understand why they came up with that's the only thing that they've got left? Because they're manufacturing civil unrest. We've seen this before. The very same people that are willing to take down towers on their own people in order to get the Patriot Act and fund war, because they don't care about you. They're fueling tensions, and they're exploiting the political leverage that comes from that. For them, it's just an opportunity. They don't care. They'll push anti-Semitism. They'll push Muslim hatred. They'll push Christian narratives, whatever they need to do. And all of that was manufactured for profit. And now we're entering into a multipolar world where we might be able to fight against it. We might be able to, the lesson that we're learning here is when people and countries have sovereignty, they're able to push back against it. When people don't have sovereignty, they end up with no economic power and a hostile takeover. So the lesson from this whole thing, when you combine this week in Bitcoin, this week in macro, this week in geopolitics, is just wake up, see what they're doing here. We need more and more people to understand this game. The game has always been divide and conquer, the very same strategies that they used on the global south, that they used on the Middle East, because they built enough economic power to fight back and remain sovereign. That's the only reason why we're getting a retreat. And the only thing that works here is when you can become sovereign enough so that you can become economically powerful enough that one day you can actually gain some power through your economic power to fight back against the system. And what do they want you to do when Bitcoin provided that tool for everybody? They said, own it with us. So that's the lesson. Boycott the Fed by owning Bitcoin. Boycott BlackRock by holding it in self-custody. Boycott the military-industrial complex by paying down your debt, not taking any new debt, and not borrowing against your Bitcoin so that they can margin call you and fund all this death, destruction, and war. Support multipolarity. And recognize that there is changes in capital, and you need to react to that. And if you stay addicted to a narrative that they've sent to you, it's all about divide and conquer. Because here's the reality of what's really happening. We are transitioning to a world where Bitcoin's sovereignty is giving people economic power to beat against this proof of weapons network. We are transitioning to a world where they don't care about you. They are weaponizing narratives in order to usher in the next wave of artificial intelligence and robotics so you don't have jobs. And you've got a small window to adjust to this and recognize that you need to get on the right side of history, and you need to build a plan for yourself and your family to embrace the fact that we're moving into artificial intelligence and robotics. That's happening. There's no stopping it. That's happening on a few fronts. If you fight it, there's no fighting it. You'll be wrecked at the end of it. So make sure you utilize it as an opportunity in order to make as much fiat currency as you can, and then save as much Bitcoin as you can so you build your power so that you can then spend local and you can actually use what is the real lesson here. If the government's not the power, who is the power? It's the multinational corporations, which is represented by the new Dutch East India Company, which has been represented by structures like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard right now. But what do they listen to? The very same things why they're manufacturing consent that you don't do right now. Boycotting. Using your money when it costs them money, they listen. When we redirect the flow of money, they listen. That's the only thing that has worked. And engaging in the political process is not the right enemy. That's the PSYOP. It is actually the new Dutch East India Company, and they only listen to you becoming economically powerful, and the way you beat their system is Bitcoin. And the way you don't give them the power is holding it in self-custody. They'll create VC-backed shitcoins to try and end up with staking networks and various other things because they want you to give them the stake. We're swimming with sharks now, but this is the decentralization versus centralization. And so always remember, you're alive at one of the most interesting and exciting times in financial history. Some are going to get wrecked, others are going to do really well. It's by understanding who we're actually fighting against that we can do it with peace, love, and unity, because Bitcoin proof of work is providing the resistance for the proof of weapons network. And when we follow the money, we can get to the truth. And I'll keep doing that with Bitcoin, this week in macro, this week in geopolitics. Sorry for the sudden flip to the videos. I hope you learned something from it anyway, because they are manufacturing civil unrest. And when you see the patterns, you can beat the patterns. And all you need to do is not buy into what they're saying, look at what they're doing with their money. And Bitcoin was the gift that was given to us in order to protect yourself. That's why it's reaching new all-time highs. That's why they had to adjust to it. If you could share, subscribe, like, get this message out to as many people, we'll break it down. I'll do what I need to do. And I'd like you to get this message out to as many people as possible to protect themselves. Sign up at simondixon.com. Join my free newsletter. I'll keep coming back, and we'll try and keep doing it with peace.
It's one thing to criticize your former employer. It's taboo to do that. But to criticize an employer that also owns extremely lethal technologies and surveillance technologies that are highly invasive and used in war zones is something else entirely.
It's 2025. We're all kind of used to government surveillance. The idea that we're all being watched all the time and don't own our own personal data has become normalized. We're also used to the military spending vast amounts of our money on just a few giant defense contractors. But one tech company wants to change both of those things
and become the ultimate military contractor and the ultimate arbiter of all of our data.
Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
Check out Palantir shares surging 22% after the company cited a boom in demand for its AI software from the U.S. government.
We're doing it. We're doing it. And I'm sure you're enjoying this as much as I am.
Palantir, a tech company based here in Denver, claims they can revolutionize government systems with their data analysis software, newly powered by artificial intelligence.
They've been hired by the Department of Defense, the FBI, local police departments, and even the IRS and Wendy's to take in the information those organizations collect even more information, and use that data to draw conclusions.
It can be used to completely reconfigure organizations' ontology, its reality, what systems matter, what information matters, what processes matter, how they are structured, what biases are introduced at each of those stages.
We talked to a former Palantir employee, dug into decades of research, and listened to hours of Alex Karp's own words to unwrap the layers of Palantir's carefully cultivated sales pitch, how they capitalize on fear, uncertainty, and unrest.
I don't think in win-lose, I think in domination. This is a company built for bad times. Bad times mean strong finances internally. Bad times are very good for Palantir because we build products that are robust, that are built for danger.
Let's rewind a little.
Palantir's story starts with one of the most effective things a company can have for sales: fear.
After the September 11th attacks, the United States government began expanding surveillance both at home and abroad. This was, of course, a boon for the defense industry at large. Simultaneously, the Silicon Valley tech industry was growing fast and making people in a once obscure industry very, very rich, very, very quickly. Like the founders and executives at PayPal, known as the PayPal Mafia. Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn guy, and Peter Thiel. When PayPal was sold, Thiel had millions of dollars burning a hole in his pocket, and an idea. PayPal had developed systems for detecting fraud and crimes on the platform. What if they could use similar thinking to analyze the world at large? So Thiel pulled from his network to build out a new company, One of the first hires was Thiel's Stanford Law School roommate, Alex Karp, who'd gone on after Stanford to get a PhD in not business or computer science or engineering, but neoclassical social theory. They named the company Palantir, after the Palantiri from J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings.
In Lord of the Rings, a Palantir stone is a magical object that allows its users to predict the future or to see what's going on in a remote location.
It was originally created by the elves. It was meant to be used for good purposes. It is potentially a very dangerous technology. It's very powerful.
Long have you hunted me?
So that's Middle Earth, but what does Palantir do in a regular Earth?
And what we do is we use what legal scholars call predicate-based search. So we would look at you, and then we would go out and say, oh, there's lots of different things in your life that may be indicative of someone involved in bad behavior.
Put simpler, they make software that makes it easier for their customers to collect and analyze data, and then act on that analysis with and without AI. By 2013, 10 years after their founding, Palantir's client list included the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the Marines, the Air Force, Special Operations Command, and more.
Did your company help to track and kill Osama bin Laden?
You know, we can never. I'll tell you, the closest thing to an answer is there are when you look at when you open the paper and look in the news about these kind of things, there's a 2/3 chance, depending on the country involved, that somehow my company was involved.
Fundamentally, the mission that is pushed to employees is that we're solving the world's hardest problems and supporting Western institutions. That is the main driver of sort of this militaristic culture that is developed inside of Palantir.
If you do not feel comfortable supporting the legitimate efforts of America and its allies in the context of war, don't join Palantir.
This entire message of we are the most lethal, we are the most able to surveil and process large amounts of data.
You have created the system which you call kill chain.
Privately. Publicly, the lawyers have some innocuous something like tech for the amelioration of unwanted blah blah blah. Some term we're supposed to use.
Okay, let's.
For me, it's the kill chain.
Kill chain sounds good.
Kill chain isn't an original term created by Palantir. It's the more general military verbiage for the series of decisions leading from identifying a target to taking their life. Palantir's contract added their software and artificial intelligence to the kill chain.
It's quicker and better and safer and more violent.
It's tech that Juan helped market.
It reduces the distance you have to the problem, but when you're able to take a step back and really see all the narratives and how they were shaped and the actual application of these technologies, your whole world starts falling apart, which is something that, definitely happened to me.
Juan didn't leave Palantir entirely for ethical reasons. He just got another job. But the reason he eventually started speaking out against Palantir came after watching the Israeli invasion of Gaza following the October 7th attacks. Palantir has contracts with the Israeli Defense Forces. The exact nature of the contracts is opaque, intentionally, but there is evidence to suggest that Palantir's artificial intelligence tech was used for selecting targets in Gaza. Karp doesn't mind the controversy. In fact, it's part of the marketing.
Palantir will even pick up the projects that other companies rejected for political reasons.
We are very comfortable being unpopular.
Karp doesn't think controversy will lose Palantir customers.
Whatever is pissing them off, they're still buying the product.
Wendy's hired Palantir to help with their supply chain. Palantir works with health insurance companies to build AI for denials management to protect revenue.
Do you want Palantir's AI making decisions about what care is covered for you and your loved ones?
They also do business with for-profit hospitals, major investment banks, and even other defense contractors. In 2024, Palantir brought in nearly $2.9 billion in revenue, 55% of which came from government sources, with the vast majority being American. So let's look at their pitch to the American government. Last year, Palantir CTO Sham Sankar put out a presentation and white paper called The Defense Reformation. He cites The Last Supper, which was a secretive 1993 meeting between defense industry executives and the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Over a dozen companies walked in, and only a few walked out. That dinner is often cited as the origin of our consolidated military-industrial complex.
And to me, I think this was the definitive moment that kicked off the financialization of defense. From that point forward, it became all about buybacks and dividends and leverage ratios.
Criticizing the financialization of the defense industry, calling out stock buybacks, that doesn't sound like a defense executive. That sounds more like the exact argument about the defense industry that we have made before.
I think what's interesting to me about Palantir is how they co-opt the language of revolution.
But Sankar's argument did work on somebody. Uncle Sam. The Defense Innovation Board, an advisory group within the Department of Defense, cited Sankar's presentation multiple times in their 2024 report on why the DoD needs to divert more of their budget to emerging technology. That's giving money to Palantir. There's a reason Palantir just replaced Ford Motors in the S&P 100 in the months after Trump was elected. The Trump administration is an ideal customer for what Palantir is selling. First, there are many former Palantir employees sprinkled across the Trump administration, from inside DOGE to foreign policy advisors to high-level technology appointees. And Palantir co-founder Peter Thiel, heavily invested in the company, is also heavily invested in President Trump and Vice President Vance. He was a major campaign donor to both. Then, the stated goal of DOGE is to streamline and combine government data, which is exactly what Palantir does.
The ways that the government is defrauded is that the computer systems don't talk to each other.
And obviously, Karp is loving it.
Disruption, at the end of the day, exposes things that aren't working. There'll be ups and downs. There's a revolution. Some people can get their heads cut off. It's like we're expecting to see really unexpected things and to win.
And what is winning, according to Palantir? This is CTO Sham Sankar in 2021.
Turning to government, we continue to advance our mission of becoming the U.S. government's central operating system as we extend our footprint across defense, healthcare, and civilian agencies.
The government's operating system. They want everything to funnel through Palantir. Palantir already has contracts with the IRS, going through taxpayer data to save auditors time by finding the easiest audits to pursue. Now, Wired reports, DOGE will likely hire Palantir to create unified software for the entire IRS, a mega API that would allow anyone with access to view and possibly alter all IRS data in one place. That's all of your financial information. And they have multiple contracts with the Department of Health and Human Services, including nearly $100 million to support HHS's core administrative data and applications, to manage, ingest, and access data securely across business domains. HHS's core responsibility is Medicare and Medicaid. That's control over millions of Americans' health records and their access to healthcare. So what does it mean for one contractor to have all that power, data, and taxpayer money as profit, especially as AI gets involved?
As we kind of increasingly live in a simulated world, we lose touch with reality and the human decisions that matter, and we move closer towards governance by algorithm. Not only made by decisions of automated artificial intelligence systems, which is a problem, but more importantly, subject to decisions made by the people who are influencing these AI systems and creating them in order to fulfill an agenda for whatever their profit-seeking or control-seeking objectives are. And when I see DOGE kind of going into every agency and addressing the IT department first, I see it as an opportunity to try to change reality itself.
But so what? Why am I telling you all of this? Palantir has no problem being seen as Big Brother, as all-powerful, as lethal even.
We're at the brink of using these technologies potentially to run our government, to run our battlefields, and our personal lives. Using artificial intelligence as a sort of panacea solution across our federal departments, and especially when they're, again, wielded by people with a very distinct agenda, puts everyone at risk.
It almost feels like that's been the plan all along. Here's co-founder Peter Thiel in 2010 at Libertopia, a libertarian conference, speaking about tech companies and government.
The basic idea was that we could never win an election on getting certain things because we were in such a small minority. But maybe you could actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you through technological means. And this is where I think technology is this incredible alternative to politics.
And here's Alex Karp in 2009 on civil liberties with regards to Palantir's work.
The central question, in my view, of civil liberties is how, it's not if the government has data, because let's assume the government has as much data as a health insurance company. It's how is that data being used? Is it being used in a way that's lawful? Meaning, do they have the right to use it? And is it being migrated into places it's not allowed to be used? We allow the enforcement of rules that the government ought to enforce. And by the way, my experience is they want to enforce, or at very least know they need to enforce. And if it's framed in that way, then you can have what is the ultimate Silicon Valley solution.
One co-founder openly wants to use the power of the tech industry to affect politics. The other wants his company to have oversight over how the government data they're paid to handle is used.
And the founders of Palantir will retain control in the company no matter what, through an obscure ownership structure. Their Class F shares grant them 49.99% of voting power, even if they collectively own as little as 6% of the company.
At the start of this journey, I was extremely afraid for the repercussions of this writing, of speaking out, but now I'm like, even more convinced that this is absolutely necessary.
We can't replace our current broken system with an even more broken one. And we can't let the worst people in Silicon Valley become our government.
It's not about whether you're actually at risk for speaking out or not. It's just the idea that somebody's watching you is enough to push people into silence.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support more nonprofit reporting into corporate greed, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments what you'd like to see us cover next.
Attention, Canadians. Do you feel disconnected from our current political system? This could be our last chance to take a real legal stand for our rights. It's time to shift the political power to its rightful owners, the Canadian citizens and Indigenous peoples of Canada. Dive into our history, understand the need for change, and embark on the quest for true democracy. Are you concerned about our nation's commitment to human rights and self-governance? The power shift to freedom aligns with vital treaties and international laws enabling us to claim our rightful place as collective head of state. We advocate legally replacing the Crown, King Charles III, and our partocracy system with a true democracy, the peoples as the true collective head of state with veto power over our governance, to ensure your voice counts more than party interests. When our national collective civil and political rights are respected, your influence on policies will be direct and impactful. Join us on this noble struggle to make every Canadian and Indigenous peoples a meaningful participant in our future as collective head of state, which was legally owed and kept from us since the patriation of our Constitution, an official decolonization from the United Kingdom of 1982. It's time to correct the past of our government's lies and omissions to the people of our great country before it is too late. People 15 years old and over can sign our Canadian People's Referendum at canadianreferendum.ca and unite for our rights as the collective head of state in our Constitution. Together, we can be the example in reshaping Canada's future, not just for us, but for all peoples worldwide, once and for all. Are you ready to be part of this transformative movement? Join the Power Shift to Freedom movement by the Canadian People's Union and be part of a bold vision for Canada's future. Visit thecpu.ca for more details. Embrace and face the change required on your part to shape our future.